I woke up to the sound of metal on metal and the kind of chaos that'll wake the dead. 6 a.m. on a Tuesday, just before the sun really starts working. You ever step outside, groggy, wearing yesterday's clothes, thinking you'll just water your tomatoes and get on with the day? Well, imagine instead you walk into the middle of a demolition derby, right there in your own backyard. That's what I found. 3 HOA crew members with bolt cutters, sending sparks flying, cutting straight through my chain link fence. Diesel fumes, crushed tomatoes, mud everywhere, and front and center, an 8-inch water main, brand new, running right through the middle of my prize-winning vegetable garden. You can't make this stuff up. Delilah Thornfield, our illustrious HOA president, was standing there with her clipboard, waving around a stack of what she claimed were city permits. Big grin on her face like Christmas morning as the excavator churned 3 years of my sweat and soil into overpriced sludge. Community water project, she declared. Your property was just in the way. As if my home was some bump in the sidewalk that needed flattening. Here's what she didn't know. I'm a retired Army Corps water engineer. I've spent half my life fixing water systems from Afghanistan to Arizona, where one bad decision can drown a whole valley. You mess with my water, you're going to find out exactly who controls the tap around here. But let me back up, because every story like this needs some context, some roots. My name's Marcus Blackwood, 52 years old, retired engineer, and for the last few years, the guy trying to turn my late granddad's 2.3-acre spread into a little patch of Colorado paradise. Granddad left me this place in Pine Ridge Estates outside Denver. The guy was a legend, grew tomatoes as big as your head, sweet corn, sunflowers, you name it. There's still a smell in that old greenhouse, dried basil, musty potting soil, hope. And that land? It's more than just dirt. It sits between Pine Ridge's 847 homes and Clearwater Springs, 2.3 miles up the line, the well that keeps this whole community hydrated. Granddad was no fool. Back in '87, he wrote a deed so ironclad it'd make a lawyer weep. Perpetual water rights. No utility easements without my written consent. The old man knew something about people and about power. My daughter, Elena, she's 16, comes up every summer. Her gardens are a thing of beauty, planned down to the inch, architectural sketches, irrigation lines. Watching those machines plow through her rows of heirloom tomatoes felt like watching someone tear up your childhood diary. Now, Pine Ridge? It's your standard upper-middle-class HOA trap. Monthly dues so high they'd make a banker blush, $3.40 and climbing, and the pipes are still older than sin. Most folks here are just trying to keep the dream alive. But then there's Delilah. If you took every suburban nightmare story, gave it a Mercedes, a pearl necklace, and a city commissioner husband, you'd have her. She's been running this HOA for 8 years, calls herself a community leader, but most days it feels more like a little kingdom. Her big issue lately? My AG tax exemption. I save $2,200 a year, and it drives her absolutely mad. So she starts her war with a notice, my gardens violate community standards. She wants me to rip up every vegetable and plant decorative grass like everyone else. I try to explain, this is agricultural land, protected since '87, but Delilah, well, she's got a way of making administrative language sound like a threat. Grandfathered rights don't override modern standards, she says. Translation, your past doesn't matter here. Not if it costs us money. That was 3 weeks before the chainsaws. I should have seen the writing on the wall. The diesel engines, the work trucks at dawn, the sudden silence when you walk into a room. That morning, as the crew tore up our garden, Delilah waved her emergency project paperwork at me. Papers that looked official, but smelled like fraud. And there went another $4,000 in tomatoes, just flattened. Well, she didn't know. I've spent decades learning every angle of water law, every loophole in infrastructure rights, and exactly where every drop in Pine Ridge comes from. Within hours, Delilah was already filing complaints with the city, accusing me of obstructing municipal utilities. By Thursday, a city inspector from her husband's department showed up, barely glanced at the mess, and declared everything properly permitted. When I showed him the deed, he shrugged, like property rights were just paperwork. And then came the kicker, a $2,500 fine for interfering with utility work. Apparently, in Pine Ridge, trying to protect your property is a crime. But Delilah wasn't finished. On Friday, she slapped me with a restraining order, claimed I'd threatened her crew. Court hearing in 3 weeks. Now I'm swimming in legal fees and paperwork. Time to counterpunch. I hired Janet Rodriguez, a property rights attorney who makes HOA boards sweat through their suits. Turns out, HOA can't just seize land for utilities, not without explicit consent or eminent domain. And private HOAs aren't the government. Janet discovered their permit listed my land as vacant municipal property. Not a mistake, fraud, plain and simple. Even better, Granddad's deed had a clause. Unauthorized utility work voids the city's access to our historic water rights. Rights to Clearwater Springs. We filed for an emergency injunction. The judge granted it. 48 hours, all work stops. That's when Delilah got bold. My security camera caught her crew sneaking back at midnight, with Delilah directing them by walkie-talkie from her BMW. They laid pipe 200 feet past the permit, systematic land theft, clear as day. And now, I had it all on camera. Violating a court order is no joke. Judges don't appreciate being ignored. But what really turned the tide? Elena had been filming everything for TikTok. By the end of the week, our story blew up, comments pouring in from people who'd been bulldozed by their own HOAs. The floodgates opened. Neighbors came by, sharing stories, showing me maps with unauthorized survey markers and mysterious holes dug by contractors. Turns out, the HOA was cataloging land for future grabs. With all that evidence, we filed criminal complaints for contempt, harassment, and conspiracy. Delilah's community improvements were just a scheme to pump up property values for her and her friends at everyone else's expense. But here's where having an engineering background pays off. When you know how the pipes are buried, you also know where the pressure points are. Delilah tried to escalate, petitioned the city to declare my property blighted, and tried for eminent domain. Her husband recused himself from the vote, but the fix was in. A council meeting, 48 hours notice, barely legal. Delilah's crew rolled out aerial blight photos, made my garden look like a moonscape. When my turn came, I calmly presented the deed and Elena's slideshow. 3 years of growth and community. But Janet saved the best for last. Documents proving that Rick Thornfield's construction company had made $200,000 from HOA contracts, all without competitive bids. Elena's TikTok was live streaming, tens of thousands watching. By the time Janet finished, even the council couldn't pretend it was all above board. The vote failed. Delilah's face, pale as a ghost, as we left the building. She cornered me in the lot, whispered threats about accidents happening to troublemakers. Her BMW idled in the dark, her mystery passenger snapping pictures of my truck. That night, paranoia gave way to strategy. Reviewing Elena's footage, I noticed survey equipment in her car. Real deal, $1,000 stuff. She wasn't just playing politics, she was mapping my land, probably lining up investors. This blight scheme was a front for a land grab already in motion. Then, at 6 a.m. sharp, came Delilah's next move, hydraulic cutters severing my water main. Emergency rerouting, they called it. Installed a flow management system. Fancy way of saying they choked my water pressure from 60 to 12 psi. My tomatoes wilted. Elena couldn't shower. Then came the extortion, $8,500 to restore service. That's when I did what I do best, dug into the records. In the county basement, among moldy files and coffee stains, I found the golden ticket. Granddad's deed granted perpetual access to the source, Clearwater Springs, which, get this, still belonged to 78-year-old rancher Bill Morrison. Delilah had been trying to buy it, lowballing, hoping to corner the water market. She wanted to jack up rates, line her own pockets. I called Bill myself. I'd rather see my land in honest hands, he told me, than let her take it for half price. I bought Clearwater Springs out from under her, quietly, through an LLC. Elena's TikTok now had 70,000 followers, documenting every twist. Meanwhile, Delilah's water-throttling stunt backfired. Residents got sick, bills spiked, and the community turned on her. Then, through legal discovery, we cracked open the HOA's books. What we found was a fraud manual, $340,000 in contracts, all funneled to Delilah and Rick, with HOA fees propping up a personal slush fund. They'd manufactured a water crisis, starve out properties like mine to seize tax exemptions, inflate rates, and funnel cash to their luxury section. The final proof? Delilah had been trying to buy Clearwater Springs with HOA money, planning to rescue the community, then charge premium rates, while wiping out all agricultural land for higher taxes. By the annual meeting, the community was ready to explode. The place was packed, 400 people, news cameras, the Attorney General's investigator. Delilah started in with her PowerPoint propaganda. Then Florence Hartwell, my neighbor, longtime record keeper, stood up and asked why her water bill had doubled. Then Dave, the plumber, presented flow charts proving deliberate sabotage. Stories of harassment, illegal assessments, selective enforcement, it all poured out. That's when I stood up and dropped the deed on the table. As of last week, I own Clearwater Springs and the rights to 78% of your water, I said. Your contract expired months ago. Unless you fix this, the tap turns off in 30 days. Delilah shrieked, called me a terrorist, claimed I was holding families hostage. Janet calmly explained Colorado water law. My rights trumped every agreement the HOA had ever signed. The board removal vote was 403-9. FBI and Attorney General's agents handed out subpoenas as Delilah was ushered out, ranting. Pine Ridge was free. New board, new transparency. HOA fees slashed, corruption out in the open. Delilah? 3 years federal prison, $500,000 in restitution. Rick? Lost his job, lost his house. My property? Now a teaching garden, open to local families, community events, harvest festivals. Elena's TikTok story became a documentary. Bought by a streaming service, her college fund restored. Florence started an HOA watchdog network. Property values soared. Neighbors started talking, trusting, living again. Standing there in the garden, watching kids plant where bulldozers once ran riot, I realized revenge isn't just about payback. It's about building something better. The smell of fresh earth, the taste of clear water, the laughter where threats used to echo that's justice. So let me ask you, where's the line between community and control? Between leadership and tyranny? If you've ever tangled with an HOA, had your rights trampled, or your land threatened, drop your story below. Tell me what you'd do for justice, or what you wish you had. Let's make sure the next Pine Ridge never happens in silence.